All right, good morning, Jerry. And we're delighted to have you here at the Birmingham Metro Baptist Association. Thank God for each and every one of you. You're enjoying the food and the fellowship. It's my great privilege to be able to present our speaker for this morning. And certainly we thank God for him. Thank God for all of you. Austin Hardison is a Clemson graduate. He's married. He has 2 children. He has experience being a director of development in a number of different areas, working with nonprofit organizations. He currently serves as the executive director of Red Mountain Grace. We are delighted to have him. We're going to have a video, and after the video, the next voice you will hear will be that of our director, Austin Hardison. Would you give him a hand? Amen.
This note is from Olivia, and I can go ahead and read it.
Sure. I'm not sure how it will work with my eyes and the writing, but we'll see. My family and I are so thankful to RMG.
The one thing I stress to everyone about Red Mountain Grace is that this apartment is our safe haven.
The emotional weight on our family was immense, and the relief from the financial strain of securing a temporary home in Birmingham was truly a blessing.
Our daughter was in a severe car accident. We had a hotel room right next to the hospital, which wasn't cheap, and had to send our kids and family home. I knew everybody wanted to be here, but we couldn't have everybody in hotels. We needed to figure something else out, and we really didn't know what we were going to do. That sounds familiar. None of us had ever heard of Red Mountain Grace, but someone I went to college with and did an internship with Red Mountain and gave us the information, and within 24 hours, Lindsay called us, and then the rest was history.
It's just a unique way that maybe isn't always thought of, but then once these families, think of Red Mountain Grace and experience Red Mountain Grace, they're at the point where they're telling other families in their community, and we're getting to serve, friends of families from their same little small town. So
I think most of the people that are involved in with Red Mountain are going to be people who are probably at the lowest point of their life or pretty close to it. And, that support network and that safety net is just unbelievably necessary at that time. And I wonder, without Red Mountain Grace, what it would have looked like for us, really.
We spent 32 days at the Children's Hospital in the NICU, sleeping at the hospital and watching our daughter go through a difficult situation. As parents, we like to think we can fix things all the time and take care of our kids, but when you're in this type of situation, you can't. So we've been through it.
As a healthcare administrator, we're not just wanting the patient to be healed medically, and when you are able to have a positive environment and family support, you see patients who are able to heal quicker. We see so many of the volunteers come alongside the families and truly spur on their recovery.
We've been the only ones in a hospital room when somebody had their baby pass away, we were the only ones there to hold them and pray for them. The fact that we can do that for a number of patients is humbling.
yeah, this one's from Amber. We cannot thank everyone enough for their help during this time. All of the Red Mountain Grace staff was amazing, especially Lindsay. Many thanks, Amber. I mean, I think the word that comes to my mind is honor, just that they share what they do with us in their pretty much lowest time of their life, or of their, many of the different moments throughout their life. My main goal is just to let them know that they're thought of.
For the last 4.5 months, we've been guests of this fantastic organisation. They must get hundreds of applications from people. But to feel special from the beginning is just unbelievable.
Every card is not just one person, it's a family, and then it's community. But at the same time, to know that because of what Red Mountain Grace did for us, and is doing for all these other people, I don't know if joy's the right word, but it does.
That are in need, and just to be able to help brighten somebody's day or help people who are going through difficult times.
I really thought it would be a great way to be an example to my kids and show them, let's go do it, and don't be afraid.
I just love that it's a place where these families can come to rest and feel a sense of normalcy outside of the hospital walls. What a gift to be able to participate in that.
And it's something that my family and I are like, we're going to keep being a part of.
I used to always talk about, where we want to give money to, how are we going to help, what are we going to do? And that conversation never even happens anymore because we know exactly what we're going to do. And it's what we're going to do, and until the end of time, and to do whatever we can to repay them. They helped us.
To direct owners. Had this ministry not interceded for us, I don't know how we would have been able to provide the opportunity for my daughter to have access to the treatment she needed to get through this situation. Red Mountain is a lifeline from God that was given to my daughter and gave us the chance to not only recover, but also to have the opportunity to get her life back. A life that her disease was trying to steal from her. And us as a family. You don't remember, all the stuff you write in these moments. This ministry does not just give shelter and help. It gives hope. In our case, the chance of life. You have helped give my girl the chance to have life. A life that has hopes and dreams and endless possibilities. And for this, we are forever in your debt. And we will always support this ministry going forward.
You kind of always walk through this world and you pray and you hope that the good comes out in everything, because there's so much negative in the world and there's just so much sorrow. It's really difficult to find the good in things because people want to try to bring you down, and it just, sometimes you feel like you're drowning. But when you get introduced to the people that we got introduced to in the situation that we were in, they made us realize that we were going to be okay. And we are. Red Mountain Grace is it's more than an apartment. It's a family.
Marisa, I really wish that you had provided some Kleenexes on the tables for lunch today. And John, thank you for your introduction. Don't say Clemson too loud, all right? I know we're here in Birmingham, Alabama. I've got one more segue. I did come to faith at a BNBA member church in 7th grade, Shades Mountain Baptist Church. And so I've known Dr. Crane for about 3 or 4 years now, and the association has been great friends with us, so I'm just excited to share more about our mission of gracious hospitality, and I'm honored to be with you for the next few minutes as well. I won't take too much time. I do want to share a couple things. So we're going to start out with some stats. I'm a big numbers guy, and then we're going to go into a little bit more of a storytelling time as well. And some of you have never heard of Red Mountain Grace, right? Many of you have, though, but you realize the pillar that the medical community is here for Birmingham, right? That Children's Hospital is unique. People travel from all over the world for it. UAB is the only level 1 trauma hospital in the state. Think about the Comprehensive Transplant Institute, the Comprehensive Cancer Institute, right? We have people coming from all around the world to receive the world-class medical care that's in our backyard. And one thing that's hit me over the last 5 years is I've been the executive director for Red Mountain Grace, and we're going to share some more stories about that, is the power of community, right? And we achieve that through the local church, the Big C Church, right? As brothers and sisters, to care for one another, to bear one another's burdens, right? But if you're from Andalusia or Albertville and you're traveling here for 6 weeks of cancer care, you are away from your community. What do? So Red Mountain Grace started in 2013. I need to turn this on, Marisa, I'm sorry. Started in 2013. Some of you have already talked about the townhomes that used to exist at UAB that the association partnered with. There were some great local churches that helped facilitate that, to welcome guests, to house them, and to provide hospitality, right? But this is our mission statement on the screen. We aspire to achieve this and carry this out, but ultimately we sum this up in 2 words: gracious hospitality. And those of us in this room, though, you could kind of substitute that a little bit with biblical hospitality, right? For the past 5 years, the Lord has really impressed upon me the parable of the Good Samaritan that you find in Luke 10, right? How do we care for our neighbors? You're all super familiar with it. We could recite it, but we have neighbors that are traveling to Birmingham for medical care. So how do we show them the love of Christ and the hope of the gospel? And at Red Mountain Grace, as a nonprofit, we do that through clean, safe, and affordable housing, right? So our guests stay. We currently operate 20 apartments in close proximity to UAB and Children, so we're kind of sprinkled across the south side, but we have 20 fully furnished apartments that our guests can stay in. I mentioned some numbers as well, but last year we served 163 families through our apartments. We ask that these guests pay $20 a night to stay in that apartment. What would that look like, though? What are their other options, right? And we're really unique in how we're set up, because you have Ronald McDonald, that's associated with Children's. You've got the Hope Lodge, that's associated with the American Cancer Society. And then Homewood Church of Christ has 7 apartments as well. But outside of that, when it comes to hospitality housing for those receiving medical care, that's it. You know, your other options would be to stay in your car, to stay in the waiting room, or to pay upwards of $200 a night for a hotel in downtown Birmingham. So that's 163 families served last year, and we provided over 6,000 nights of housing that a family didn't have to come out of pocket and stay in a hotel, right, or stay in the waiting room, or sleep in their car. All that amounting to over $1 million in lodging expense saved for the families that we housed, right? And again, going back to our model, we're a little bit unique because we're not affiliated with specific health system or a specific hospital or serving only one diagnosis. But this is a little diagram that breaks down why guests were here receiving medical care and what they were here for, right? If you're coming to Birmingham for a lung transplant, you have to stay local for 90 to 100 days post-transplant, right? That's 3 months away from community, 3 months away from your job and income. What does that look like? 3 months away from cutting the grass, you know? So we want to house our guests and provide gracious hospitality while they're here. And a lot of these are significant diagnoses, right? Like an ICU stay. We've housed a gentleman that was racing his bike out at Barber Motor Speedway. We've housed a family that was from Mississippi vacationing at Smith Lake, and their dad fell and had to be airlifted to the hospital. So anytime you see a helicopter landing on top of Children's or UAB, most of the time that's a family that we can serve. To stay in a Red Mountain Grace apartment, our guests have to be from 50 miles outside of Birmingham. We have a 1 week minimum stay, and then they have to be actively receiving medical care, right? That's the only criteria to stay in a Red Mountain Grace apartment. And then we're also unique too because we exist to house both the patient and the caregiver. You see ICU on here, or neonatal ICU as well. Those guests usually are in the hospital full time, and when they're discharged, they get to go home. But what about their caregiver, right? So our apartments are set up for both patient and caregivers as well. These are the medical centers that we partnered with last year as well. You can see it at the time it was Brookwood, but now Baptist Health as well. UAB Children's, a lion's share of our guests are receiving care at UAB and Children's, but also Grandview, UCA, and then Select Specialty. So those are our hospital partners. Where did our guests come from, right? Every red state, and then you can see some other countries in that it was supposed to be a 4-minute video, right? But it turned into a 9-minute video encapsulating our past guests and who all's involved with Red Mountain Grace. But the York family, they're from across the pond in Barbados as well. So we're housing families from around the world. At the end of this month, Red Mountain Grace is going to house a missionary from Kazakhstan, right? So we've housed families from Ukraine as well. So folks are coming from all over the country to receive medical care. These are some numbers as well. You can kind of see this. If this was a business, right, you would say this is pretty healthy, right? Everything's up and to the right. But these are the numbers of families that we've served. So in 2023, we served 171, a record year, right? And then last year served 163. So that's also due to length of stay. Our average length of stay is 40 days, right? So imagine being away from home for a month and a half. And that's really average. And if you're a numbers guy like me, that's an inverse bell curve a little bit too. So most of our guests are here for just a couple weeks, or right now we have a family staying in one of our apartments that's been with us for 180 days, right? So long-term stays. And that's important that we have fully furnished apartments, right? That you're able to have a place where you can have respite, where you can do laundry, where you can cook a meal, places that are like home. I walked into one of our apartments yesterday, and a gentleman on a desk had dual monitors set up, right? And he's working remotely in our apartment, and our units allow that to happen. He's caring for his mom, who's a lung transplant recipient. This is kind of a little bit of a staggering slide as well. We always, and during my tenure, have maintained a waiting list. So while we served 163 families last year, we received an additional 206 applications for housing of families that we were unable to house. And friends, these are just numbers that are coming to us, right? We don't do any advertising or any marketing or anything like that because we maintain a waiting list. So there's even more families going unmet for housing as well, right? And I already mentioned too, what are your options? So we are aspiring to grow, to open more apartments, and to serve more families through gracious hospitality. We're gonna segue into story time for a quick bit, but this is a picture of one of our bedrooms. Again, fully furnished. I love this picture because it represents home, respite. In the bathroom, you can see the linens provided, a place where at UAB, if you're staying in the hospital as a caregiver, right, you have to get on a shower schedule. You might not even be able to shower, every 3 to 5 days, right? A comfortable bed. This room is bright, it's inviting. Again, the linens, right? How do we provide a place that is welcoming and hospitable for our families? Again, kitchens, right? A place that's fully furnished. We had a gentleman from Chattanooga stay with us last year, Mr. Champion. And this was his second bout with cancer while he was staying in our apartment. And the first go around with cancer, Mr. Champion lost 70 pounds, right? And this was a guy that really couldn't afford to lose 70 pounds. So upon checking in to stay with us during his second treatment, right, his wife is asking, hey, what are the apartment set up? What does it look like? And she brought a Vitamix blender, right? And so during his 6 weeks of chemo and radiation, right, she would cook miso ginger salmon and broccoli, and she would take that and blend it up in the blender and feed him through his G-tube. Mr. Champion did not lose any weight in his second bout of battle with cancer, right? Also at the same time, their daughter was getting married, and LeBronda, his wife, was sewing her wedding dress, right? So the apartment, she brought her sewing machine into the apartment and was able to sew her daughter's wedding dress, right? And he's able to walk his daughter down the aisle. And again, that's just a picture of, again, what our units provide in a place to cook your favorite meal, if that's PB&J or whatnot. I'll never forget my second week on the job as an executive director. Not only am I, asking for major gifts, but I'm also changing light bulbs as well. And so I walked into an apartment, and this family was from Pascagoula, Mississippi, a lung transplant recipient. They had been in a hotel for 6 weeks, right? And I'm going in, and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon to change a light bulb that's out in the kitchen, and I walk in, and y'all, there's not a pot, but a cauldron of spaghetti on the stove. And I know about the early bird special and all that, but at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I get a little puffed up and prideful and having an internal dialogue of, guys, this is a little early for dinner, right? But think about that. They had been in a hotel for 6 weeks, and this was their first home-cooked meal in 6 weeks. And his wife's spaghetti was his favorite meal. So what great hospitality, or what great environment if you're going through treatment to experience that and to cook spaghetti. Again, our units, it's a place where you can watch, if you're a Clemson fan, you can watch the Clemson game or your favorite Netflix or anything like that, right? This is a place of respite. 92%, and we're going to share a little bit more about this, but 92% of our pediatric families have additional children, right? So a hotel is not conducive to that. This is a place where the whole family can convene and stay together, right? There is science and data behind recovery of having community and having someone who's going through a medical crisis have their family there for recovery, right? So our apartments allow for that. How do we do this, right? How do we carry out gracious hospitality? Because we can't do it alone. We're a team of 4, right? And so we manage those 20 apartments, the waiting list. And again, gracious hospitality isn't just about providing clean, safe, and affordable housing, but we do other things like that. So we rely on volunteers to help clean and prepare apartments. One thing that I love most about that stat of 163 families, it's not just that milestone and the numbers of housing provided, but that was 163 times that our apartments and our guests were prayed over, right? That someone gave of their time, right, and their talents to clean and prepare an apartment to welcome someone. We rely on guests to help cater meals, provide meals, right? That form of hospitality, growing up here in Birmingham, I thought it was rolling out the fine china and having a big spread, but it could just be something as simple as a cup of coffee. It could just be some tzatziki roll-ups, right? Providing meals to make that guest feel welcome. So we rely on volunteers to do that. We celebrate, right? Celebrating treatment milestones, birthdays, anniversaries. This is the Howell family in this picture. And Lily is their 2-year-old. And when they were staying in our apartment, they had a daughter, Abby. Sorry, not a daughter, Abby. Abby's the mom. Abby, Jake, Lily, and then they had a daughter prematurely. And while they were with us, Lily had her second birthday. So we were able to have a birthday party for her while she was in the apartment, right? We've had guests have a 45th wedding anniversary, and we provided a steak and a candlelight dinner, right? When a guest has a treatment milestone, a small group of ladies were serving Miss Rebecca. She was here for a bone marrow transplant. For a bone marrow transplant, you have to stay local 90 to 100 days post-transplant. And so they created a chain with words of encouragement in Scripture, 90 different Scripture verses for her, so that every day she could be reminded of God's love for her while she's going through treatment. So we want to celebrate treatment milestones, anniversaries, birthdays, and to see our guests. And then also to serve. About 8 to 9 of the Metro Baptist local church partners also partner with us, right? So that's a local mission survey that's helping onboard or open an apartment or paint an apartment. What you see right here is some folks from Hunter Street that have, every time a guest checks in, we provide a welcome bag that has paper towels, laundry detergent, dish detergent, toilet paper, sponges. It's like this little welcome kit to get you going. So Hunter Street rallied those supplies, and some of their members put those bags together for us so that when we can have that for when a guest checks in. There's also the service component of, at Christmas, we decorate the apartments. At Thanksgiving, we provide Thanksgiving meals. On Easter, we do flowers for our guests as well, right? So how can we just create a sense of normalcy, but love our neighbor through the daily ins and outs? 15% of our guests end up passing away, right? So that volunteer component with us, I got to hop on Dr. Crane's podcast earlier today, but it's really just the ministry of presence and loving our neighbor. I mentioned Luke 10, the Good Samaritan. I'm forever impacted by that because the Samaritan uses his time, his gifts and talents, right? He stops and gives of his time, right? He gives of his resources, not just financially, but of bandages and oils to wrap the man. He provides transportation for him, and then he gives of his money as well to pay for his stay in the inn, right? We all have been given gifts and talents. How are we using those to care for our neighbor? So while your talents, you might not like cleaning a toilet, right? I've got a 5-year-old and 4-year-old at home, and our house looks like a war zone all the time anyway. So you might say, I struggle keeping up with my own house clean, right? I don't really want to scrub a toilet, but what can you do, or what gifts has God given you to help welcome our neighbors as well? So these are the main 4 avenues in which we're working with local businesses, local churches, and volunteers to carry out gracious hospitality. This is Drew and his mom, Angela. As you can kind of see from the pictures, Drew was in a horrific motorcycle accident, right? But his mom stayed with us while he was recovering in the hospital. And again, he's wheelchair bound. We operate 20 apartments right now. 11 of those are 2-bedroom apartments. The other 1 bedrooms, and thinking of gracious hospitality, the lens of gracious hospitality. For those other 9 that are 1-bedroom or studio apartments, we have sleeper sofas in there, right? So also we have ADA accessible units. So how do we care for, our guests? If you have had a lung transplant, most of the time you cannot navigate stairs, right? So we have access on 0 entry access for our guests in terms of the units. Again, the Howell family from Montgomery stayed with us for several days. I mean, we're talking 4 months overall when their daughter Emma was with us. Emma ended up ultimately passing away because of her complications, but they stayed with us 2 different times. You've got the Norris family from Auburn, right? Their daughter Addison was born prematurely, and then they have a daughter, Callie. So Callie's, keeping the family together, a place that they can be a family unit. Callie's reading to her sister while she's recovering and all of that. A cool thing about this story is Addison turned a year a couple weeks ago, and it's for their birthday. Instead of asking for gifts, they rallied cleaning supplies and dropped those off for Red Mountain Grace. Daniel's actually on staff at Highlands in Auburn as well. This is Aubriana, a guest from at the end of 2024 last year. Aubriana was in foster care. Aubriana also needed a new heart. Before she was able to receive that heart, the physician said, she's not going to be eligible for this organ until there's a long-term plan, right? She has to find a forever home. And so her family, her foster family, while they were with us, finalized her adoption during their 4-month stay with us, right? And what better picture of the gospel, right, than adoption and the gift of new life, of a heart as well. So Aubriana, the Burgess family, is from Roanoke, Alabama. If you had that on your bingo card and know where that is. But again, just a great picture of what's happening around us, right? That hopefully God can give us the eyes to see him and ears to hear him of what our brothers and sisters are doing around us. I've got a couple different quotes again as well. The Bryant family stayed with us for 56 nights. Again, I'm a dad. I have a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old. If you've spent any time in the NICU, you know how stressful that is. As a parent, you would do anything to care for your children. What does that look like? But again, the location, Miss Bryant, it's a convenient location to see our children that were in the NICU, right? So we have to be in the neighborhood of those hospitals as well. How are we breaking down those barriers and those burdens for the guests that we're caring for? Tia was a caregiver, Miss Goodell. Again, they were paying $750 a week for a hotel, right? And, you know, she talks about to have a place to cook, to do laundry without having to pay extra, how meaningful that was. So again, 72 nights with Red Mountain Grace, away from home, away from community. This is Mr. Cecil. He had a birthday while he was with us, right? And he just wanted some red Gatorade. But what better way to celebrate him during his cancer care, right? 45 nights. And I think what I love most about hospitality, right? The Greek word for hospitality is philoxenia. Now, I don't have a degree from Southern or Southeastern or any advanced degree like that, but philoxenia. And the root of that is love for the stranger, love for the outsider, right? And at Red Mountain Grace, we have folks that come to us, and some of them go home and we never see again, but we get to embrace our neighbors while they're with us, right? This is Baylor, right? Baylor Bankston, born prematurely, and his mom, Parker, they got to go home about 3 weeks ago. So they were a guest with us. And if you volunteer with us, especially at check-in, when you walk a guest into a Red Mountain Grace apartment, I wish I could bottle this up and share it, right? But the cascade of relief and emotion that just falls across our guest's face when they walk into an apartment and see that this is what we get, like this is where we get to go home. It's an experience that you'll never forget, right? So I share her thoughts just because, you know, walking into this apartment, like I just, you know, how do you explain it? How do you share it? And ultimately, that's the grace that we get to provide our guests while they're with us as well. So I do want to have questions for Q&A, but I also have some friends in the room and want to share their story a little bit as well. So thank you for giving me your time today. Wally's, before you share, you want to do Q&A first, or you want to do Wally? Okay. Jamie and Stephanie Wally, this is just such a small world, but they were guests of ours back in 2020. Now Jamie is on staff at a local church here in Birmingham. But I would love for you guys just to have 5 minutes and to share a little bit about your experience. Before I see that, I'll cry sharing this, right? But again, the love of the stranger, love of the outsider. And one of the ways the volunteer talks about celebrating. But Timothy, their son, had a birthday while they were with us. And you can share more of that. It was in August? July, right? Yep. And so I had it on my calendar. Stephanie had shared that he liked strawberry cake, right? So being a good Birmingham resident, I stopped by Eggers and I got the largest slice of strawberry cake that I could find, right? And this is how gracious hospitality and the power of the gospel impacts you being a part of it, right? Like we think we serve or do things to impact others, but ultimately it's us that are impacted through serving and through loving others. I made an additional stop. I had a meeting after I grabbed that piece of cake, and that was foolish of me to stop because even for 30 minutes, that cake quickly turned into goop in the Alabama heat, right? So I have this honking piece of Edgar's cake, and I'm on my way home, and I stopped by the apartment just to wish Timothy happy birthday, right? And I almost didn't do it, y'all, because I was ashamed of that cake just being slop, right? And I knock on the door, and we wish Timothy happy birthday. And, the Walleys invite me into the apartment. And y'all, he's had a birthday party, and it's great, right? And this kid's on cloud nine, no telling how much sugar he's had at the time. But I give him this gift of cake, and this smile just illuminates across his face. And he didn't care that it was melted. And he's, thank you so much. And we're talking. At the time, I had a 1-year-old, right? Charlie, my oldest, was 1 at the time. And his birthday was in June. And we were chatting about Charlie. So here we have this young boy, 6, 5. Yeah, 6 at the time, right? And he's just talking up a storm. And he's showing me hospitality. He says, well, what's his name? And I said, Charlie. And Timothy sprints across the apartment, right? And goes and gets this envelope. And he comes back to me and he goes, here, I want him to have this. and it was some of his birthday money. So he got $1 for me to give to Charlie on his birthday. And y'all, like, I'm forever impacted by that, and I'm kind of amazed I told that without crying, right? But the gift that our guests give us and that our friends give us, that, you know, to think here's this little boy who's just received a transplant, whose life and his family, everything's been turned upside down, but what a gracious picture of loving our neighbor, right? That I'm forever impacted. So before I ask and take any questions about Red Mountain Grace, Jamie and Stephanie, if y'all come up and share a little bit about your story.
Yes, I'm Jamie Wally. My wife Stephanie, one of our sons, Eli, is with us today. And we, just real quickly, the stories you heard on the screen ring so familiar to us. We got Timothy at 5 months old through foster care, and we knew he was going to have to have a kidney transplant. And just through the journey, we realized we needed to be at Children's of Alabama to have his transplant. We lived in Mississippi, central Mississippi, but we knew we needed to be in Alabama at Children's for his transplant and all that. And consider this, when he first started his nephrectomy, when they removed his kidneys, that was in March or February of 2020. Now, if y'all remember what was going on at the beginning of 2020, that's when the pandemic set in. And so the very first thing we realized when we got word that he was going to have the nephrectomy was that, okay, we're going to have to be in Alabama. We need someplace to stay. So I called the hospital and I started making all these calls. Well, the Ronald McDonald House was not full, but they were no longer taking any other people because of COVID. They had shut down. So the social worker at the hospital said, well, here's some of our partner hotels. I was like, oh, great, maybe they'll have a good deal. So I called all the hotels, and the cheapest one I found was their rate was like $138 a night. And we knew we were going to be here for a while because they were going to remove his kidneys. And so that whole process, that whole journey of trying to find someplace for my family to stay while we were here, because I was pastoring a church in Mississippi, it was stressful. It's one of the most stressful things we've ever encountered, and we hadn't even gotten to a surgery yet. We were just trying to find someplace we could live, that we could afford, because I knew that Stephanie and Timothy were going to have to live here, and I was going to be driving back and forth from Mississippi. And so as we got into that process and finally were able to know who Red Mountain Grace is, and for them to kind of come alongside of us, for me as a husband, as a father, to know that my family was going to have a place to stay and to live that was welcoming, was nice, was our own place, especially in light of what was going on with COVID and all the restrictions and all the shutdowns and all the rules of every other place that you could possibly go stay in. To have a home away from home was huge. And I'm going to let my wife speak into that, because she's the one that lived in both of these apartments they provided for us during those times. I'm going to let her speak to her experience living here. But the weight lifted off my shoulder when we walked into that apartment and saw it was super nice. It was in a great area. It was probably nicer than where we were living in Mississippi. And we're like, man, this is amazing, you know. And so that stress to be removed was critical in both of those times we were here. So I'll let Stephanie speak into the actual stay.
So as Jamie said, we moved here early February of 2020. Timothy had both of his kidneys removed and began dialysis. And he was not a typical dialysis patient. A lot of patients can just go 3 days a week. Well, we quickly found out that he had to go at least 4 days, sometimes 5. So it was just Timothy and I throughout the week. So it was me driving back and forth to the hospital day in, day out. And both of our apartments that we had were within close proximity to the hospital, which was just a huge lifesaver because it was just me. And back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We did this for probably, 7 or 8 months. We were able to go home for a short time in 2020, but things went south. We had to move back. Thankfully, another apartment opened up for us through Red Mountain Grace. And at that point, we just had to wait. We didn't know when transplant was going to be. We just had to wait until a kidney was available for him. And so that was just our life, dialysis, 5-6 times a week sometimes. And as Austin mentioned, Timothy had a birthday, and birthdays are huge to kids, especially Timothy. And he was turning 6 in July, and it was COVID, so not a lot of family could come to town. There were still some uncertainties about all of that, but some of his volunteers from the church at Brook Hills, a small group there, they rallied around us, and they showed up with this caravan of just cars, just endless cars, banners, posters, balloons, and all the presents that the child could possibly want. He was, and still is, into Marvel characters, and they just showered him with love and gifts and food and cupcakes, and you would have never known that anything was ever wrong with him. That child was so happy, and I'll get choked up thinking about it, but just to worry, like, my child's fixing to have a birthday. What are we gonna do? We're 4 hours from home. Not everybody can come here. But Brook Hills, Red Mountain, Grace, they showed up for us. They showed up for Timothy. And he did not miss a thing. In fact, his birthday was probably better being here. And it's just one of those things that, it's just a memory that is just so special, that they just went, to me, was above and beyond, but to them, is just what they do. And come September 11th of 2020, we finally got a call for a kidney. And we went in, had his transplant. He did amazing. We had to stay a little bit longer because you have many, many more visits after that. And we ended up staying until October. I think you said it was 123 days that we stayed the second time. And at that time, the apartments were a little bit cheaper. I think they were like $10 a night at that point. But still, even so, $20. That, I mean, compared to what our family would have paid for 123 days living away from home. And that was our second time to be here. Like, you just can't, most normal people just cannot afford that. And so the safety, the affordability, the proximity, the love of the volunteers of Red Mountain Grace, they were just there for us at such a crucial and difficult time in our lives, and we just cannot thank them enough.
I don't want to